Honor in words, neglecting care, reforming veteran healthcare today. My name is Diana Bauer, and today I will be talking about the veteran healthcare epidemic that we are facing today as a country. In his Nobel Prize-winning nominated novel, All Quiet on the Western Front, Eric Maria Remarque says, "I am young, I am 20 years old, yet I know nothing of life but despair, death, fear, and fatuous superficiality cast over an abyss of sorrow." Also referring to soldiers, he says that they are a generation of men who, even though they may have escaped its shells, were destroyed by the war. There also shows statistically a veteran mental health care epidemic. In 2021, there have been 6,392 veteran suicides. And compounding that, 1 in 8 veterans have been diagnosed with major depressive disorder and require therapy and medicative services. On top of that, or actually reflecting that, the cost of not treating veteran mental health care is higher in the long term due to reduced quality of life and suicide. These statistics and All Quiet on the Western Front led me to connect it to two stimulus sources, A Walk to Kobe and Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation. In A Walk to Kobe, the author describes a feeling of disconnect from his homeland. He says, "Strictly speaking, it's not my hometown anymore. I feel a deep sense of loss at this fact, as if the axis of my memories is faintly but audibly creaking within me. It's a physical sensation." The alienation that the author describes is a universal feeling, but this feeling is intensified for veterans who are coming back to a land they don't really connect with anymore. And the transition from military to civilian life can fracture one's sense of identity and mental health and association. And they experience loneliness because of that dissociation. Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation speaks of the physical effects that a lack of healthy mental health has on veterans. In 16 independent studies, it shows that poor social relationships were associated with an increase in both the risk of heart disease and a 32% increase in the risk of stroke. They also said that those who experienced social deficits were more likely to die earlier, regardless of what they died from. And the odds of developing depression in our adults were more than double in those who report feeling lonely. So it's this cycle of the veterans are dying because of their mental health and physical health that results from bad mental health. And this led me to my research question. Should the Veterans Association or the VA modernize its healthcare systems and methods of therapy in order to better rehabilitate veterans into society? And I eventually came to the conclusion that in order for veterans to receive proper health care, the VA must modernize its healthcare systems and methods to better fit the healthcare needs of veterans. Many veterans suffer from something called where they suppress traumatic experiences until they resurface as chronic mental health challenges such as depression and PTSD. Like I was talking about, the transition from military to civilian life can fracture their identity, leaving familiar places feeling distant. But the problem that makes the mental health hard to deal with is that their problems aren't just intense, they're complex. Their symptoms such as PTSD and depression don't usually exist in isolation. Rather, they're compounded by other issues such as depression, anxiety, and substance use. Research found that 80% of veterans with PTSD experience at least one additional health disorder. And this complexity to their mental problems is what makes solving those problems difficult. What causes this is that, unlike civilian trauma, military trauma isn't a singular traumatic event. Rather, they're frequently exposed to prolonged stress due to combat situations, life-threatening missions, or non-lethal situations, such as sexual trauma or a training accident. And this is when they're exposed to trauma like this, which is much different from people normally deal with. It reshapes how their brain processes fear and memory, and it leaves them lacking a sense of belonging or safety long after they return back to their home. And this makes everyday environments feel threatening or unpredictable and leaves them with PTSD and hard to cope with normal situations. And then, without proper healthcare systems available to them, that mental burden falls on veterans or their family, unfairly so because they're supposed to be taken care of by the government. And so the number one problem, or at least that I saw in my research, was the administrative aspects, that they're not receiving healthcare. It's there, they're just not getting it. So there's a gap between those who need the care and those who receive it. Studies show that roughly half of those who need treatment for these conditions seek it, but only slightly more than half of those who receive treatment receive minimally adequate care. This shows that there's a system in place, but it is not effective in consistently getting care to those who need it. However, 92% of veterans expressed that they would rather improve the VA system rather than dismantle it. So the distinction here is important, that the issue is not the existence of support structures, but of their accessibility and effectiveness. This is highlighted in the 2016 Congressional Report from the Commission on Care, which highlights the systematic barriers such as excessive wait times and difficulties that veterans have navigating the VA sources. It's also compounded. VA users are more likely to screen positive for psychopathy, endorse current suicidality, and report enduring more traumas.
Charlotte Lawson, please come to the front office to sign out. Charlotte Lawson, please come to the front office.
They also scored lower on measures of functioning. And so the VA assists a population that requires highly responsive, individualized care, yet its administrative structures create delays and barriers that make receiving help difficult. So this also led me to another problem, which are the therapy methods they use, or just how they get it to the people who need it. Those who experience, like I said, physical health and mental health are deeply interconnected. So those who experience loneliness or depression face higher risk of cardiovascular disease, strokes, or early mortality. And this reflects an importance of timely and effective health care or therapy. Two therapy methods used by the VA are cognitive processing therapy, or CPT, and prolonged exposure therapy, or PE. Cognitive processing therapy identifies and challenges faulty beliefs that prevent veterans help veterans reframe their experiences in healthier ways, and is shown to significantly reduce PTSD. Prolonged exposure therapy similarly confronts traumatic memories and reduces the intensity of fear responses over time by confronting those memories. But the problem in these therapies are very evidence-based and they work, but there's a problem in the real-world application of these therapies. They face long wait time, limited availability, and geographic barriers that make it hard to maintain consistent care. And veterans show high rate dropout rates of therapy and inconsistent veteran engagement show that the way that these therapies are used do not align with the needs of veterans. The therapy is not entirely outdated or ineffective, but that they're just insufficiently adapted to the long-term needs of veterans. And two solutions are modernizing the administrative aspects of the VA and standardizing the methods of treatment. First, although the VA has made tremendous strides in its treatment methods, the application of these therapies is not always delivered consistently across locations. In Albany, Georgia, a review that I just pulled from Google said that there's absolutely nothing positive to say about the staff or service, and the staff, with very few exceptions, is completely unprofessional. In contrast, another VA in Atlanta, Georgia, one of the reviews said, gratitude for the surgeon whose steady hands gave me a new lease on mobility. This discrepancy in care relax a serious need for reform in how treatment is done across locations. And the solution that I came to, or really a two-pronged solution, is to expand telehealth and the use of digital healthcare services and standardize the methods of therapy. Telehealth and digital healthcare services reduce travel burdens, increase flexibility, and allow for continuous monitoring of patient health. And therapy, just making sure that the same therapy is used everywhere so that everyone receives the same health care regardless of where they live. Telehealth, because sometimes veterans have a hard time getting places, it means that they don't have to deal with distance, discrepancies of care scheduling, or the stigma that often prevents veterans from going and getting the health care that they need. Veterans using telehealth services showed improved quality of life and greater satisfaction with care, and in 2023, more than half of the VA mental health services were delivered virtually, displaying the effectiveness of this approach to veteran health care. In his broadcast to the Armed Forces, Harry Truman said, "Our debt to the heroic men and valiant women in the service of our country can never be repaid. They've earned our undying gratitude. America will never forget their sacrifices." Without reform, we're not delivering the health care that we promised, or the care that we promised to veterans. The VA does not lack resources or expertise, Rather, it faces a mismatch between traditional systems and modern needs. But with simple reform and taking a couple steps, it'll be hard, but it can be done, and it should be done to give proper health care to those who deserve it, serve those who served America first. This is the We're Excited, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, so a couple of follow-up questions
Yes,
to
ma'am.
your very important research. So how did some preliminary information that you gathered inform or direct your ongoing research?
When we were reading the stimulus sources, I was in the middle of reading All Quiet on the Western Front, which is a famous novel about World War I, and it directed my attention to the mental health problems of veterans, because in the book he describes that people committed suicide so they didn't have to go back home and face those mental health problems, and that led me to dive into the disconnect that people were feeling, and led me to try and find a solution that gives people proper health care. So that's kind of what led my whole research in the direction it was going, because it kind of resonated with me.
Thank you. And one final question. Did you come across any or see any additional questions arise as you were researching? What additional questions emerged as you were doing this research? Was there anything that caused you to change directions?
Not necessarily caused me to change direction. Something that I found while researching that just never made it into my essay or presentation was how they train veterans, which causes them such mental stress. They kind of rewire their brains to be able to kill other people and teach them things. What I found really interesting, instead of using the classic shooting target as a circle, they made it a human form to desensitize the soldiers to killing other people. And then when they try and go back to society, the way they rewired their brains just doesn't mesh well with normal life. And so how they train soldiers was something that was really, really interesting to me. It's just very difficult to make into a presentation and give one solution, and I wish I could have gone down that road. But that was something I found pertinent. That's one of the things that causes these mental health stresses. And
Thank you, Diana, for sharing.